Hi, I'm Sonia, and my channel is An Enthusiastic Reader. I wanted to check in with you and let you know what I've been reading over the last 6 weeks and just have a general chatty check-in and see how you all are doing and what's going on this summer. I have been watching some booktube and I haven't been commenting. I haven't been really engaged. I don't know. I mean, I can't be the only person who has just been totally overwhelmed and just obsessed with the news over the last, say, 4 weeks of just this constant roller coaster of emotions and bad news and incredibly bad things happening, and then things on the upswing a little bit. So I'm feeling more optimistic, and that's a good thing. But my brain, it feels like it's short-circuiting sometimes. I am having a hard time concentrating on books, and just certain things resonate well, and certain things I just really cannot stick with. So I can't be the only person. So please let me know if you too are just feeling like the world is like kind of subsuming everything that I'd like to be doing in my own head. But I have read some books that I'd like to chat with you about. So let's do that. The first book I'd like to talk about is called Consent, a memoir by Ciment. And this is really an interesting setup. Okay, this is the second memoir that Ciment, she's a novelist, but the second memoir she's written about her unconventional marriage. When she was a teenager, she fell in love with her professor, who was 30 years her senior, and he ends up leaving his wife for this girl, and they end up getting married. So I think, they had a 35-year marriage. Like 20 years ago, she wrote a memoir talking about being an artist and this love story that she felt like she needed to tell about her relationship with her husband. And so she wrote that, it was well received. And now, after her husband has died, she is reckoning with the memoir that she wrote and about her level of consent in her relationship. That, of course, she wanted to be in this marriage. She was in love with this man, but he was a professor over her in an art class, and he was an artist. And so now she's trying to kind of wrap her head around the marriage, which did have some happy times, but also had a lot of unhappy times. And did she really have the capacity to have made that decision when she was a teenager to marry this much, much older man? So it's I think, I don't have a copy of it. All of the books I'm going to talk about today I borrowed from the library, and I do not have any more. So no specifics, but this was a short, interesting memoir that captured a time and place in the 70s. And you'll see a repeating pattern because I read quite a few books that took place in the 70s over the last 6 weeks. And so I'm kind of in that mindset of looking back at the way that women were regarded in the 1970s and 80s versus how they are regarded now, and how differently we see weighted relationships and age differences, and how back then it really just wasn't questioned as much. Even her mother was like best friends with her husband because they had so much more in common because they were about the same age. And so he would turn to her mother for advice and for confidences because they had much more in common than he had with his wife. So, and there were just a lot of little dynamics like that were really interesting to see looking as she looks back and regards her life. I read a really funny, warm, weird premise of a novel called Margo's Got Money Troubles by Rufi Thorpe. And this is a story of a girl who sleeps with her teacher. And she's like a freshman in college. He's her professor. They have an affair, and she gets pregnant. And the minute that she tells him that she is pregnant, he freaks out. He wants nothing to do with her. He does not want to help support the baby. Plus, he's married, and he doesn't want his wife to find out that he was sleeping with his student. So this girl, Margo, decides to keep the baby, and then is just trying to figure out how she's going to support this child in this situation. And so she has been estranged from her father for years. He's not a professional wrestler, but he was a professional wrestling promoter. And so he toured all over the world and promoted wrestling and had this very kind of bohemian, like rough lifestyle, and wasn't there for his daughter. But her mother has remarried, or is going to remarry, a very Christian, devout man. And so she does not have enough support from her mother. And so she turns to her father, and he is kind of down on his luck anyway, and having some health problems. So he moves in with Margo, and together they form a partnership of taking care of this baby. And Margo has money troubles, as the title tells you. And so she decides that maybe she could earn money by starting an OnlyFans account where she's a sex worker online. So she's not going to have, she's not going to be a prostitute, but she is going to sell her body via OnlyFans. In the meantime, one of her customers, who views her and pays her a lot of money, he wants to go deeper into her personal life, and he wants to forge an actual genuine connection, and they do that. So that's part of the story of just kind of negotiating what it's like to be a sex worker, just the logistics of it, and then how to become viral online. And so it's very of the now story about this influencers and promotions that you do to get more followers. But at the very heart of the story is the relationship that Margo reignites with her father, and her romantic relationships that she ignites with this customer. And is she going to be able to do this long term? And also, she just loves this baby so much. And so it's about friendships and parenthood, and also about romance. And I read it in like a day because I just could not wait to get back to it and follow it. Okay, the next two books that I read are works of nonfiction set in the 70s, and they kind of dovetail with each other, and you will see why. The first one is called Cocktails with George and Martha, Movies, Marriage, and the Making of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf by Philip Gefter. And so it's not academic, but it's a well-researched and footnoted accounting of how Edward Albee, the infamous the infamous playwright of the 1960s and 70s, became famous, how he was writing his plays, who he knew, and how he conceived of writing Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, the play. And then there's a whole section dedicated to the staging of that play, how they got the financing, how they cast it, what regard that play had, how it kind of reinvigorated the play scene, the drama scene in New York City, and then in the world. It was renowned. Everyone wanted to see it. It was like the it play to see. And then it started getting backlash because Albee is homosexual, and so many people involved in drama in the 1960s and 70s were gay. And then how the intellectual playwrights, the intellectual critics of the time that were writing for mainstream publications started insinuating that plays should not be gay, and that they were too raw for American tastes. But so all of that happened, and then all of the egos involved, all the relationships, all the betrayals, and then how they decided they were going to turn the play into a movie with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, and all of the drama that went on with how they were going to get them signed. And the man who wrote the adaptation changed the ending of the play, and Mike Nichols, a lot of this book is about Mike Nichols, the director, and his ego and his ability to see that the movie needed to be more like the play, and how he got the play rewritten to be more like he got the movie to be rewritten, the screenplay, to be more true to the play itself. And so there was just like so much in this that was so interesting to me, because the play came out in 1966. And just thinking about the world at that time, and the arts and all of the relationships. And so I really enjoyed that. And then I actually listened to, did I listen to it? Did I read it? No. Then I read, sorry, my brain. I read a memoir by Griffin Dunne, who is an actor, called The Friday Afternoon Club, a family memoir. And Griffin Dunne is the son of Dominic Dunne and the nephew of John Gregory Dunne and Joan Didion. And so he grew up in an incredibly privileged Hollywood life, because Dominic Dunne kind of insinuated himself into Hollywood and made, I wouldn't say friends, but was acquainted with all kinds of Hollywood royalty and all of the producers and directors, and he created this social life that he couldn't really afford. And also he's grappling with his own closeted homosexuality. He's married to Griffin Dunne's mother, and she realizes that he is gay, and so they have to break up. And so there's a lot of drama involved with that. And then the second part of this memoir grapples with the murder of Griffin Dunne's sister, Dominique, she had a boyfriend, and he was abusing her, and he ended up strangling her. And so it's the accounting of that, and then the court, or the trial that happens after that, which ends up making Dominic Dunne start chronicling. He kept a diary because Tina Brown, who was just starting to work for the New Yorker, told him if he kept a diary, she would publish it. So he kept a diary of the trial, and then he became a crime writer after that. So there's just, I know that it's a complete memoir of privilege, and so was the Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf book. Cocktails with George and Martha also, they show a very rarefied view of America and privilege and wealth and celebrity that I think is really fascinating, because I remember reading a lot of Dominic Dunne's trial diaries in Vanity Fair when they were published. I was just really obsessed with him. And then, so Griffin Dunne wanted to write his own memoir, but he wanted to chronicle his whole family as a memoir. And I listened to him on the New York Times book review podcast, and I really enjoyed that interview also, because he just talked about his life, and he understood that he was, completely privileged, and understood the dynamics of violence in America. And there was just I just really enjoyed it. I was highly entertained, and also really sad for the things that happened to him and his family at the time. So it was a very good read for me. And those two paired together, even mentioning both Elizabeth Taylor and both mentioning Cleopatra, the movie, and the incredible fame of Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, they kind of talked to each other, because they didn't really overlap in a time period, but they were just abutted with each other. And so it was really interesting to me. And then I saw that on HBO Max right now, there is a documentary about Elizabeth Taylor and her life. And so I'm very anxious to read that and see how that comes into these books that I've been reading and what I've been interested in. And I guess the last thing I want to talk about is I've been re-listening to a couple of the Elizabeth Strout novels. I've already, I've already talked about these so much, but I re-listened to Olive again, and I re-listened to Lucy by the Sea, because I have an advance copy of Tell Me Everything, which I'm going to get to this month, by Elizabeth Strout, which is like the merging of the worlds of Olive Kittredge and Lucy Barton. And I've already talked so much on this channel about how much I love these books, but what I will say about re-listening to these, especially during this time period where I am just so I'm just so preoccupied and distracted by current events that taking these audiobooks out by one of my all-time favorite audiobook narrators, Kimberly Farr. She is just fantastic. And to me, she is the voice of Elizabeth Strout novels, as well as others. Like, she also narrated American Wife by Curtis Sittenfeld, and she's narrated several books that I've liked that were outside of the Elizabeth Strout world. But just having her tell me these stories and then listening and remembering or re-encountering what happened to Lucy and to Olive in these last two books made me think about so much about older people and how they still have the capacity, how we, as we are aging, still have the capacity to grow, to change, to realize things about ourselves. Like, we aren't done just because we are getting older. And these characters are older than I am, but we're all in that same plane of realizing the limitations of our lives and what's going to happen to us, and realizing, that there still is a capacity, though, to change and grow. And Olive especially really hit me when I was listening to Olive again, because she is going through a lot of things, a lot of changes. She has a very cold relationship with her son. He is not going to really be there for her, and she has to come to complete terms with that. And she can still make friends, and she can still confide, and she can still care, and she can still understand that, yes, she's aging and things, our lifespans are shortening, but that it's not all over. And so to me, that was really heartening. It just the understanding of that. And I hope these themes are explored more in Tell Me Everything when I get to it. But that's been really gratifying to me. A couple of audiobooks I've been listening to are in the Maisie Dobbs series. I don't really want to talk too much about those experiences. I think that this is such a steady and reassuring series of detective stories set in the early 1900s. Now I'm up to book 6. I'm in 1932. And I just really like the progression of Maisie Dobbs's character and how she has grown and changed and improved psychologically. And I also just like learning about things that were happening in the world at the time that she is doing her psychology and detecting. I just like the way that they are set up. And I know I still have like 8 or 9 more books to read in the series, and they are just really comforting. I like the narrator of the audiobook, and those are just really good, like, comfort reads for me. And so I am continuing to read those. And I'm also, I'm reading The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but like, everyone I know that I respect who has read The God of the Woods thinks this is a fantastic novel, 5-star read. And I'm reading it, but I am really struggling, even though I know it's a really good story and it's really ambitious. It's got a lot of timelines and a lot of characters. And again, I think it's because of my own mindset that I am not looking forward to reading it, although I do want to finish it and I do want to find out what happens. And I know it's a really good book, but I'm struggling with it. So I just decided I'm going to kind of put it off for a little bit and not think about it too much. And then I'm going to come back to it because I know I'm going to like it, but I'm just having a hard time with it right now. So that is what's going on with me. Please tell me in the comments if you also have trouble sometimes reading things that you know are good, and tell me how you're doing. And I just want to say hi and thank you so much for watching. And I look forward to talking to you soon in the next video. Bye.